When was the last time you could think of someone or even see someone using a phone that wasn't an iPhone or even an Android? And chances are you can't even remember because I myself even can't. Billions of people around the world use phones every single day, yet 99% of those phones run either one of these two operating systems. Google Android or Apple iOS, and that's it. You really can't think of a third one. What's even crazier is that almost every other technology gives you more than two options. If you're buying a computer, you have Windows, Mac, Linux, or Chrome, and then if you're buying a gaming PC, you have more options than that. But the device you rely on mostly almost every single day is only a two-horse race here. It's been locked down to those two for almost a decade. So what really happened to the competition? What happened to the companies worth billions of dollars, and why aren't they investing into more operating systems besides Android and iOS? Why does every other company fail to create that third option? And thinking about it, is anybody really capable of even doing that? The biggest reason Android became so dominant is because Google never tried to make money selling Android itself. Instead, Google actually gave it away for free. Android is open source, meaning any company can take that operating system and put it on their device. Once that phone or tablet ships, Google then makes their money. They make it from search, Gmail, Maps, YouTube, and the Play Store, and all types of other services that they offer. The operating system isn't the product. We are. Because Android is free, it spreads faster than anything else. You can actually buy a $1,000 flagship phone running Android or even a $100 budget phone running the exact same operating system. No matter the budget, Android has an option for you. The scale is almost impossible to compete with because any company trying to build a brand new operating system is asking manufacturers to abandon something that already cost them nothing. And then there comes Apple. This is a complete opposite of what the approach is. Apple doesn't license iOS to anybody. You will never see an iPhone made from Samsung or Motorola. Yes, Samsung makes the parts, but you will never see a Samsung iOS device. And if you want iOS, you have to buy an iPhone or an iPad. And that's been Apple's MO since day one, and I don't see them changing it at all for anybody. Now, because Apple designs both the hardware and the software, everything is built specifically for each one. That's why iPhones are known for their smooth performance, long software support, and consistency. Apple controls every piece of the experience. But what keeps people locked in isn't the iPhone itself, it's the entire ecosystem. Buying an iPhone and suddenly the Apple Watch becomes more useful, and then maybe you buy some AirPods because they pair so instantly, and then you buy an iPad or a Mac because everything works together without any extra work. Before you know it, switching always becomes incredibly difficult because every device you own works together. Android dominates through openness, Apple dominates through exclusivity. Two completely different strategies, yet both ended up creating nearly unstoppable ecosystems. Believe it or not, it wasn't always this way. There was a time when companies thought that they could make a new operating system and make it worldwide. See, the biggest missed opportunity was probably the Windows Phone. I actually owned a few of these. I enjoy good technology. If the Windows Phone was still around today, I would recommend it every single time I made a video. The live tile interface looked completely different from anything Android or iPhone offered. Instead of rows of boring app icons and home screens activity, your home screen felt alive with information updating in real time. The animation was smooth and the software was fast, and the phone felt incredibly polished. Microsoft invested billions into the Windows Phone. Then they bought the Nokia phone business thinking that they could actually compete with Apple and Google. See, none of that mattered. And then there was Amazon. Back in 2014, they released an Amazon Fire Phone, hoping they could leverage their massive consumer base and make it into a smartphone company. Instead, it became one of the biggest tech failures in history. The phone focused heavily on Amazon services and introduced features like dynamic perspective, which tracked your head movements with multiple cameras. It sounded impressive, but most people simply just didn't care. Combining with a high price and limited appeal, the Fire Phone disappeared just as quickly as it arrived. Amazon did give up on the cell phone industry, but their tablets mainly focus on Android today. Amazon eventually gave up on the smartphone business, although their Fire tablets run Android right now, so you can still pick one up, but it runs Android, not the Fire OS. And then there's BlackBerry. If you're old enough to remember BlackBerry, it was a smartphone before the iPhone existed. Businesses, celebrities, politicians, executives all carried one. The physical keyboard was legendary. I actually still remember the physical keyboard. I loved it. There's multiple companies trying to do it, and I respect that. Problem was that BlackBerry underestimated just how important touchscreens and mobile apps were becoming. By the time they actually finally adapted, Android and iPhone have already taken over. Eventually, BlackBerry abandoned its own operating system and switched to Android, even if that wasn't enough to save the smartphone business. So if companies like Microsoft, Amazon, BlackBerry all failed, despite having nearly unlimited money, well, why? The answer is simply just called the app gap. Making an operating system actually isn't the hard part, it's creating apps for that operating system to run fluently. And it's also convincing developers to actually support it, when they already know Android and iOS down to a T, so it's difficult to introduce something that new. Think about it from a developer's perspective. Why would you spend months and millions of dollars on an app for an operating system that nobody uses? Now flip it around. Why would anybody want to buy a phone that doesn't have Instagram, TikTok, a banking app, even Snapchat? Or even just their favorite games? Candy Crush, anyone? That's the impossible cycle. Developers won't build apps without users. Users won't buy phones without apps. It's one of the strongest networking effects in the entire technology industry, and that's the exact reason Windows Phone ultimately failed.
On a 1080p device, so you do not have that.
Missing just a handful of major apps was enough to keep buyers away. Android and iPhone don't have this problem. Consumers already know that they could already pick up any app they want basically when they turn the phone on. That's an advantage that's almost impossible to create. So does that mean that nobody has a chance? Well, not exactly. The closest thing to a real challenger is Huawei's Harmony OS. After US trade restrictions prevented Huawei from using Google services, the company had no choice but to build their own ecosystem. At first, Harmony OS still relied heavily on Android underneath the surface, but that's no longer the case. Huawei has now introduced Huawei OS Next, which completely removes Android capability and relies exclusively on the native Huawei OS apps. That's a huge gamble. Huawei also has something competitors never had, one of the largest smartphone markets in the world supporting it. If any company has a realistic chance of creating a third major mobile operating system, Huawei is probably in the strongest position today, especially inside China. Outside of that, the projects like Ubuntu Touch and Poshmark OS are building Linux-based operating systems focused on privacy, open source software, and giving older phones a second life. They're incredibly interesting projects, but realistically, they're nowhere near competing with Android or Apple at a global scale. Then there's smaller. Then there's another possibility that could completely change everything: artificial intelligence. Right now, we are still open to apps getting things done. We open Spotify for music, Maps for navigation, YouTube for videos, and banking apps to manage our money. But imagine a future where you don't need apps anymore. Instead, you simply just tell your phone what you want, and an AI assistant opens everything behind the scenes without ever opening an application. If that kind of shift actually happens, it could completely redefine what a smartphone operating system even is. And if the rules just change suddenly, Android and iPhone may not have the same advantage they've spent years building. But until something dramatic happens, Android and iOS are the major competitors and are going to be here until that happens. Billions of users, millions of apps, decades of developer usage, and the ecosystems right now are stronger than ever before. Android won by giving its software away for free. iOS won by having exclusivity. Recreating either one will be incredibly difficult. Being both at the same time, that's one of the hardest challenges in the tech industry right now. Catch you on the next one.